It has been a year since Superstorm Sandy stormed up the East Coast, leaving a path of destruction and devastation in her wake. How much did the so-called storm of the century cost residents, businesses, and local governments? How many people were ultimately impacted by that hurricane? And how goes the recovery efforts some 12 months later? Find out as we revisit Sandy 1 year later, right now on It's Your Call. These are the images that we've seen quite often in the last year. Longtime family homes and vacation rentals left dangling in midair, dunes and beaches damaged and in ruins. Heartbreak on the faces of so many. In just a moment, you'll meet the author of a new book called Surviving Sandy, who will share with us more images of her wrath. But these are the images that we're starting to see more and more of now. Residents and businesses rebuilding and recovering. We're going to share some of those stories as well. Also this hour, we'll provide some startling information about the long-term economic and ecological impact of Superstorm Sandy. Hello everyone, it's good to have you with us. I'm Lynn Doyle. As you may recall, I was personally impacted by Hurricane Sandy as my home on Long Beach Island in New Jersey was severely damaged. Later, as a result of Sandy, we nearly lost that home when a sinkhole formed when our retaining wall broke through. Later in the show, I'm going to share with you our progress and our frustration with rebuilding our property. I'm sure it's something that many people out there will be able to relate to. First, though, I want you to take a look at these numbers. $70 billion, that's the billion dollars. That's the estimated cost of damage, the loss of tourism, and the loss of business in New Jersey and New York. $1.97 billion in infrastructure damage and public building damage in New Jersey alone, and $950 million in loss of New Jersey tourism. That's through the summer of 2013. These numbers were put together in a report entitled Extreme Weather, Extreme Cost, The True Financial Impact of Superstorm Sandy. That's by the group U.S. Strong. So joining us first this hour on the telephone line is the New Jersey Director of U.S. Strong, Lauren Townsend. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan initiative focused on building support for extreme weather relief and protection. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lynn.
Those were some sobering numbers that I just read. $70 billion in total damage. How were you able to ascertain those figures?
Oh, we had a team of reporters and investigators who looked into it. It's $70 billion to the region, and more of half of that is attributed to New Jersey, which is the hardest hit state. But what's troubling is that New Jerseyans are going to be paying, according to state officials, $8 to $13 billion in expenses, costs that won't be covered by the federal or state assistance. And even those New Jersey officials admit that their $8 to $13 billion estimate of so-called unmet needs is significantly low. And what our report details is that we can likely expect that shortfall is going to rise, perhaps by billions or even tens of billions of dollars. And we can't afford to be left unprepared for another superstorm like Sandy.
And that's one of the things we want to talk with our guest about today is what we can do to move forward and what we can learn from Sandy. In your estimation, what have we learned from the so-called storm of the century?
Well, we can't afford to be left unprepared again for another superstorm like Sandy. In the last 5 years, we've been inundated by 6 major storms. We know from experts and scientists that we're in for more extreme and frequent extreme weather, but effective measures do exist today that would protect homes, businesses, and communities from future disasters. Prevention is less costly, it creates good jobs, it saves lives, and recent studies prove that for every dollar spent to prevent devastation from storms, you save $9 of cleanup and recovery costs and some of that devastation that we experience. So we need to prepare appropriately, and what we're advocating for is a national extreme weather relief and protection fund that would protect and strengthen homes, communities, public health, the environment, and economy.
I know that we could probably...
it should be a national fund because it's a national problem, extreme weather.
I know that we could probably do an entire show on that, and I invite you and your organization to join us for that in the future. But very succinctly, can you tell us what that project would do, how it would prepare residents, not just here, but all across the country?
Well, what we need is a federal fund that you can't play politics with. We know that a lot of the Sandy relief money that was an inadequate sum of money was was on hold for a goodly amount of time because of politics in Congress. We need a federal fund that would be reminiscent of the Highway Trust Fund that you couldn't play politics with,
Okay.
that would avail communities that are vulnerable to extreme weather to do the green infrastructure building, the dunes, the flood plans, the work that's appropriate to the community that's vulnerable, so that the community can be shored up, infrastructure can be hardened up. We're looking at sewerage systems, electricity, highways, et cetera, that all need to be hardened up to prepare for the next storm.
Lauren Townsend, thank you very much for that update. We certainly appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. We're going to stay on the telephone lines now, where we are joined by New Jersey Senator Robert Singer. He represents the 30th District, which includes parts of Monmouth and Ocean counties in New Jersey. He is now calling for the creation of that permanent National Extreme Weather Relief and Protection Fund to which Lauren just referred. Senator, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Lynn.
Can you tell me the kind of impact that the area you represented experienced as a result of Hurricane Sandy?
Well, I represent the shore communities: Belmar, Brielle, Seagirt, Spring Lake, Manasquan, Bradley Beach. The areas that they're heavily hit. And Belmar is totally flooded out. In Point Pleasant Borough, you're still 1,000 homes have not been totally repaired yet. So a lot of my district was heavily hit. A lot of homes were lost, and these are year-round homes mostly, not so much seasonal. And it's been devastating to the communities.
I'm sure that you've been hearing the frustration from your constituency about the efforts to rebuild. So many people want to go back, whether it's vacation or a permanent home, and yet they're finding it difficult. Are you able to offer them any assistance, or what have you learned through this process in assisting them?
Well, first of all, we learned when I spoke to FEMA originally, they all said the first few weeks they wear their jackets that say FEMA. After the first few weeks, they take them off, and we've had a lot of problems with FEMA. We also saw a delay of money coming to the state because there wasn't a permanent funding source, as you heard about, so that we had to wait until Congress passed that money, and that delay affected things because haven't gotten all the money yet. And people thought that they could do repairs and get paid back. They can't. And people are going through a whole litany of things to be able to get money and get money to them. And this is really a 5 to 7 year repair process. People think everything is okay. It's not. Businesses were off 50% this year. They're coming back, but it's going to be a long road back. And people have to understand that it's going to take a long time before the shore is back to where it should have been.
And that's actually a lesson that we learned after we covered Hurricane Katrina in 2005, that it did take quite some time. It was not until 2010 until that area said that it was fully back. And there are some areas that still need rebuilding efforts. I know that you were there for your constituency. We always appreciate the time that you give us. Thank you so much, Senator Singer.
Lynn, thanks for having me on.
Good to hear from you again. We're going to move on now. We've talked a little bit about the economy and how it was affected. Now we're going to talk about the environment. Jeff Tittel is the director of New Jersey Sierra Club, which, as you know, is the nation's oldest and largest environmental group. It's good to have you back with us.
I'm glad to be here.
So the money aside, which is so frustrating, I know your focus is on the environment and the ecological impact. Yes. What can you tell us about the long-term effect of Hurricane Sandy?
Well, it's been devastating. People don't realize that 65% of the dune system along our coast was either severely damaged or destroyed, and that's the barrier that protects homes and the inlets from storm surges. On top of that, a lot of that area is also important habitat for birds, and that was all destroyed. Wetlands have been destroyed, which are important not only to protect flooding but for fisheries. A lot of debris, toxic waste, oil, garbage, and pesticides from people's homes got washed into the bays, and it's created a toxic mess in the bottom of the bays, and so there's still a long way back for environmental recovery.
Are we able to monitor that? Are we able to see whether or not that debris is at the bottom of the bay or in the ocean, or is it something that kind of washes along as the tides move in and out?
No, a lot of it gets stuck in the sediment of the bays themselves, and then it ends up getting into the food chain, into the fish and the fisheries. In fact, this year was something very strange where the spawning in the Delaware Bay was normal. They same number of fish eggs, but not that many new fish. So something killed all those baby, the larvae, and they didn't grow to maturity. And it's probably the chemicals in the sediment. Same thing with clam beds getting smothered. And so if the ecosystem gets damaged at the bottom of the food chain, it affects us at the top of the food chain, and that's part of the problem.
Would you suggest then that people not eat product that came from the bays or the Atlantic Ocean?
Well, right after the storm you could, and it was banned because of so much raw sewage. Now things are better. It's just that that right afterwards it was really bad, and a lot of that is washed away. Now there's a long-term environmental problem, which may be the impact to the different fisheries and bird species that have, because they've lost their habitat, the wetlands have filled in, the trees have disappeared, and the long-term impact of the sediment will be monitored by the state and federal governments to make sure it does protect us, that is protective.
And yet the feral cats that live in my neighborhood seem to survive and thrive, even though the storm came through. Yeah. You mentioned the dunes. I have a special interest in the dune system. There's always controversy around rebuilding the beaches, whether or not we should put money into an area that obviously could be affected at any moment by another storm.
Well, I think that's part of why we need to have long-term planning to find out which areas where we're going to be wasting money, because we're going to continue to go underwater every time there's even a minor storm, versus those areas where it pays to do that investment. And one of the keys is that it's just not beach replenishment. Dunes are a critical part of holding that beach in place, but it has to be a real dune, not some pile of sand that they call a dune, but a real dune that works, like up in the northern end of LBI, where the dune system around Barnegat Light really protected the beaches and the homeowners, and as well as protect the environment.
All right, on that note, I do want to thank you for being with us. As always, you always add a great element to our program. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'd like to know if you have a personal story about Sandy, if you have questions about the impact of hurricane, the so-called storm of the century, and whether or not you think it could happen again. A lot of people say it's just around the corner, that it's happening more and more frequently. If you want to join us, you can email me directly at lynn@lynndoyle.net. You can also find us on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. We'll be back in just a moment with a look at surviving Sandy and talk to the author who wrote that book. These are some of the scenes that will forever be associated with Hurricane Sandy, which swept up the East Coast on October 29, 2012, and did some $70 billion in damage. Half of that damage was incurred in New Jersey alone. When the storm did the unheard of, it turned inward. Coupled with a full moon, high tide, and storm surge, Sandy ended up being the worst storm ever to hit the Garden State and New York. This hour, we're talking about the emotional toll, the economic burden, and the ecological impact of this so-called storm of the century as the one-year anniversary is acknowledged. We welcome you back. I'm Lynn Doyle. This is It's Your Call. If you'd like to join in with your questions or comments, or perhaps share a personal story that you experienced in the last year with Sandy, you can email me at lynn@lynndoyle.net. lyndoyle.net. I told you at the beginning of the show, and I know that many of you who have watched the show for a long time know that I actually had a home, 2 homes that were affected by Hurricane Sandy, and that's why we wanted to kind of make sure that we give people an opportunity to share their stories as well. Scott Mazzella is one of those. He spent most of his youth on the Jersey Shore, and now he's written a new book called Surviving Sandy, Long Beach Island and the Greatest Storm of the Jersey Shore. Scott, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you.
This is a great book, I have to say. When I went through it, it's great in that it captures the feeling of what happened on October 29th, and yet it's hopeful. What inspired you to write it?
Well, the most simple answer is they asked me to write it, and I said, of course. It's not the kind of book you want to write, necessarily, but once the publisher and I we met down in Holgate, one of the worst damaged parts of LBI, and we looked around and we said we had to do this. So we went down to a local restaurant, hammered out some ideas, and we came up with a book plan.
And the book incorporates personal stories from people on Long Beach Island, either people who had been there for quite some time or newcomers, but they all share the same passion for the island.
Yes, the book includes people from LBI and also the mainland, from Tuckerton Beach, Mystic, all the way up to Waretown. And these are regular people. A lot of them are year-round residents, and they have their stories because they stayed, and they didn't want to leave their homes. And in hindsight, I don't know if they would all do that again, but they have some very, very compelling stories, and we're very glad they shared them with us. They're really gripping.
Are there any in particular that really stand out to you that you find most compelling or most gripping?